So next up, we're going to be taking a look at how we're able to make web service calls or integrate with external systems. So we're taking a look at how Liferay is able to, make web service calls, or how other systems can make web service calls to Liferay. And so there are two big ways that Liferay exposes its external APIs via JSON and SOAP. This is all done with Service Builder. So we can use Service Builder to make this happen. Behind the scenes, in order for us to publish or make these APIs available, we have JAX-RS and JAX-WS. Yeah, JAX-RS is going to be for REST services. JAX-WS is for services like SOAP. So using Service Builder to create our web services. As mentioned before, within our service.xml, there's going to be a specific tag that we can use. This is going to be remote-service equals true or false, depending on whether or not we want them. So Service Builder is going to be creating our remote classes by just having service. So the API for our assignments is just assignment service. The implementation is going to be assignment service impl. And over in the interface, we're also going to see the @JSON web service annotation, right? So that way we can publish them as JSON web services. So all of the public methods in a specific interface, once registered using that annotation, can be available as JSON web services. So it'll look a little something like this. In service XML on the top, we set remote service to true. Down here on the bottom, we'll see with our assignment service API, you'll have the @JSON web service annotation towards the top, having all of our public methods exposed for the world to call, or most of the world. We can configure that too. So what if you don't want a specific method exposed? One of the things you can do is use this @JSON web service and then set this mode to ignore. So when dealing with our JSON web services, it's going to be corresponding with HTTP methods, more specifically either GET or POST. So when we have a specific method that we may want to integrate, we're going to have the @JSON web service. We're going to set that method using one of the HTTP header methods, but at the end of the day, it's going to resolve to either GET or POST. Right. So when we are explicitly picking and choosing which web services to expose, we're going to start off using that @JSON web service once again, and we're going to set the mode equal to manual. From there, we'll then pick and choose which specific methods we're going to be exposing. So this gives us more control if we want it. In this example here, the GET assignment method is the one that we are explicitly exposing. Now, we have a lot of configurations behind the scenes for our web services. So over in portal-ext.properties, we have a bunch of different properties we can set to either help protect our services or just to kind of further configure them. One of the ones I want to highlight is the second one. This is the discoverable page. Now, all Liferay instances by default has this set to true. This allows us to navigate to a specific URL to take a look at all of the different web services, and we can even test them. So if you want to not allow people access to that, you can set that to false. Right? You can also set which HTTP methods are fair game, as well as a couple of other ones. Now this testing page, again, we mentioned it before in just a few moments ago. This is the page where we can actually test a web service call. So if we wanted to get our assignments based off of a group ID, and we wanted to make this as a service call, or we wanted to make this from an external application, we can first test it to see, is it going to work? If we pass these parameters, will this actually successfully call the method? So pretty cool functionality that we get there. Now moving on to our SOAP API, the SOAP services are not created by default. JSON, we get that as soon as we make our services. SOAP, on the other hand, we got to do a little bit of configuration. Kind of the long story short is we need to make a WSDD file, and to do that, we would run a Gradle task that will do just that. So just like with JSON, our SOAP API can also be configured over in portal-ext.properties. Portal-ext.properties allows us to say which IP addresses are able to call our SOAP services. So we can pick whichever IP addresses we want. By default, localhost or 127.0.0.1 is the only one, right? Just as JSON had a testing page, SOAP also has a testing page as well, right? So we have the URL/API/access for SOAP and testing it out. Now, REST services are something a little bit more new here in the Liferay world, introduced more so in the previous version. But in order for us to make REST services behind the scenes, we have Apache CXF to help us out. And it also helps out with our regular SOAP services or JSON web services. So we can have our applications publish JAX web services to these specific endpoints or parts of a URL. So Apache CXF provides for us a way to expose our web services or publish them, and then these endpoints again are kind of parts of a URL. So extenders. With extenders, they come in two separate flavors. We have SOAP extenders, and then we have REST extenders. Each one are used in conjunction with the CXF endpoints to expose our web service based off of what type of web service we are going to be exposing. So SOAP extenders for publishing SOAP services, REST extenders for publishing REST services. So how do we publish a web service, either REST or SOAP? Just like what we've done many times, we're going to start off by creating a component. From there, we'll implement the service as we desire. We'll then create or configure the endpoint. So what's the URL or the URI that's used in order for us to access the service, right? We then map the endpoint to our REST service so that when the endpoint is invoked, it'll invoke our specific service. And we're going to be doing that over in the extender, depending on which service we're using. So let's go ahead. We're going to work on this. We're going to be exposing some of our various methods or services over in the gradebook application and exposing them as REST services. So this is going to be our end goal here, right, is to expose our various services so that other applications may call them. So let's go ahead. We'll work on this exercise all together.